So good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I promise that my talk this morning will be more confused than usual. Don't want to disappoint anybody. One of the things that happens is when I'm kind of composing my thoughts for the talk in Sunday mornings, Saturday night, Sunday mornings, things come to me, and I think, well, they should be incorporated into the talk. So it's happened today, and I'm going to start with there'll be some screening involved in this process. So I'm going to put up this first picture and talk about it a little bit. Let's see what it did. There it is. There it is. So this on a post from a fellow named James Kenny. And James has been a Zen practitioner for 50 years, recently got more active in formal Zen, and he's now a Shuso of a Sangha out in California, Blue Mountain Sangha. Origin of this, what's interesting about this picture, it's just, to me, kind of wonderful, this idea of Jesus and the Buddha embracing. But it's the person who said it originally before James believes that it's Manichaean in origin. Now, Manichaeans they knew a lot about. So I looked that up. It's a 3rd century religion in what we now call Iraq, what was Persia. And it had 3 prophets: Zoroaster, Muni Buddha, and Jesus, which I thought was a fascinating fusion of East and West that occurred there. This, Islam had not yet come to Persia. So these were the religious influences of the West and the East meeting. And the other thing that I love about this picture, is that, there's a sort of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white-skinned Jesus floating around. And pretty clearly in this much earlier picture, much closer to his lifetime, he had brown skin, and what appears to me to be maybe pulled back dreadlocks. So really much more man from the African continent than Scandinavia. I know this will come as a shock to the white supremacist Christians, but anyways, but Jesus was not white, and this is just wonderful, the 2 of them embracing. So that's here, and it'll actually come to have some greater significance as we talk further. All right, so I'm going to share for the moment. Okay, yes, so fusion of elements. Yes, so and now I have another element that I want to kind of fuse in here this morning. This was on my mind when I woke up. As you know, you probably have the same. Yeah, I'm sure other people have the experience. You wake up and there's a song going in your head. Oh, everybody's looking at me like I'm nuts. Nobody has a song going in their head when they wake up in the morning sometimes. Okay, well, anyway, I did, and I'll take, so I'm going to play this song because this also has some significance to us this morning. Give me light to gamble to dance. Give me the heavyweight champion of the world. Give me a socialite with a long
Spring a curve, but you'll have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but you'll have to serve somebody. Might be rock and roll that he sing on his stage. Might have drugs in your pocket, women in a cage. You may be some businessman or some high-degree thief. They may call you doctor, they call you chief, but you'll have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, serve somebody. It may be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but somebody. Construction worker working on a home. Maybe mansion, you may be living in a dome. You may own guns, you may even own tanks. You may be somebody's landlord, maybe own banks, but you'll have to serve somebody.
Okay. So as much as I would like to keep listening to that, that's really it's a sweet, it's sort of a gospel, really gospelized version of that song. So we now hear from a Jewish prophet. Sometimes he's Jewish. He moves around. But anyway, so what's this all got to do with anything, right? Well, I think the question that I wanted to explore going around the barn this way is he right? Do we have to serve somebody? Right? You know, he said it might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but we have to serve somebody. Very interesting. Because I think if we asked most people who are Zen Buddhists, we would say, no, you know, who are we as we come to Zen Buddhism? I mean, from a variety of backgrounds. But many of us are atheists or agnostics, secular humanists, all different spiritual perspectives that don't include serving anybody. Which, you know, Zen is non-theistic. There is no God talked about Zen, an important distinction. As a non-theistic, it just doesn't deal with the subject, a higher power of God, right? And this really allows Zen to spread a very wide tent. Because like for example, in our lineage, there are Catholic priests and sisters. There's a Sufi sheikha. There was a rabbi. He's now deceased. You know, but there's a possibility of combining them with many other spiritual traditions. or not, right? It's, you could be a Wiccan and practice Zen. There's no, because we have no dogma, we have no boxes around that would normally have, well, we do have a lot of little boxes here, but none of the boxes that are normally drawn around spiritual practices, right? We have a lot of freedom. So how does that jive with what Dylan is saying? I mean, he is, after all, a laureate. He must know something about what he's talking about. Where do we have to serve somebody? Well, I would argue that in Zen, we don't have to serve anybody, including Shakyamuni Buddha. And you all know that, the kind of famous things, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Or the story of the Zen priest who was visiting another temple, and they left him alone in a room a while, and it was cold in the room. And when they came in, they found that he had been burning their Buddha statues to keep himself warm, right? And so Zen is famously iconoclastic, right? What does that mean? If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Means don't worship the Buddha. Don't elevate the Buddha. Don't make Buddha into a god, in part. And the other part, and that's going to segue into our koan for today. We actually have a koan. Right? Yeah, I'm going to segue to the koan. Let's do that. So this is a koan that I've talked about before. Long Po's Goblins of Dregs. I have it here in the Blue Cliff record. The 11th case. Huang instructing the community, said, all of you people are gobblers of dregs. If you go traveling around this way, where will you have to? Do you know that there are no teachers of Chan in all of China? At that time, a monk came forward and said, then what about those various places who order followers and lead communities? Huang said, I do not say there is no Chan. It's just that there are no teachers. So in essence, Huang is pointing to something very similar to the idea of if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. We are each the source of our own realization. And nobody, the most skillful teacher, cannot do that for us. It's something that we each must do for ourselves. If we want to be realized, we have to do it for ourselves. And if we think that, today these same things go on, and maybe even more so, it's easier online. But if you lived in China in the Tang, you might have to hoof it a couple of 100 miles to go to another teacher temple to hear their teaching. But now we're online. You could say, you can have your choice. You can have any of the best teachers in not only in this continent, the world, to choose to do that, right? A lot of people listen to Jundo Koan. He's in Japan. Wonderful teacher, by the way. Right? So, but in a sense, and I know that there are people doing that, kind of hop around the line. I'm going to hear this guy, and I'm going to hear this guy, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you understand that none of those teachers can help you realize your true nature. You must do it. The responsibility is totally yours. Teachers can occasionally provide some guidance, can point the way, but ultimately, realization is a personal inside job. And that's why Wang Po is saying there are no teachers. He says that there's not that there's no Chan is, of course, Zen, the Chinese word. But he says, but there are no teachers. Why? Because no one can teach you, in a sense. You must do this for yourselves. So back to Dylan. Who must we serve? I think the answer in Zen would be we must serve our own fundamental nature, our own true nature. That's where our responsibility lies. Our responsibility doesn't lie to some external source. It lies to our true nature, to realizing our true nature. And if we have any responsibility in this life, that is it. To realize and to manifest, to realize, sometimes we talk about realization as if that's the end point. The end point, that's the beginning. The end point is manifesting, showing it in every aspect of our lives, in every minute of our, about that last week, that kind of idea of 24/7 practice, of bringing it to life in our relationships, in our places, in our families. That's our responsibility. Now, along the way, it might be said that there's something else that we need to serve. And that is the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The three treasures. Now, what is that first treasure? The Buddha treasure. It's not the historical Buddha. That is not Shakyamuni, although it doesn't exclude him. It is our own essential nature, our own Buddha nature that we are practicing to express. And it's sometimes considered to be also the teacher as manifesting the Buddha, but I'm less confident of that. Shall I say? It's much more, and this was what Wampo is pointing to here. It's much more about each of us going deep within to find that fundamental nature. And then we have the Dharma treasure, right? The Dharma treasure. And that's the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha and the teachings of everybody else subsequently. Bodhidharma and Dogen and Maizumi Roshi, Bernie Glassman, and on down. Over 90 generations of teachers bringing forth this Dharma. And the Dharma is the path. We need the path. We need those teachings to guide us. They're very important. And the third one is the Sangha. You know, we can't do this practice alone. We need community. We need others who are traveling the road with us to give us support, to give us inspiration, give us a sense of community. If we embrace this as a lifetime practice, excuse me, there are going to be a lot of variations in our motivation over the years and decades. It's difficult to stay committed to this practice long term, to any practice. And that's a big place where Sangha comes in. You know, it's kind of others to reinforce it. Others to reinforce the idea that we need to just keep persisting, keep on the path, keep practicing. At those times when tempted to slide away. And they will come. They come for everybody. They're not abnormal in the sense they're normal, but therefore we need these supports. So we need these three treasures. Steph, you cannot have Zen without the presence of all of the three treasures. And I believe that he was absolutely correct in that. We need those three treasures. So if I were answering Dylan's question, or that's posed by this idea we've got to serve somebody, I would say that we need to serve our fundamental nature and the three treasures. No dogma in that. No set of beliefs that you have to subscribe to. You don't have to put a Buddha figure on your altar. You don't even have to have an altar. Right? If you wanted to have Fuzzy Bear on your altar, that would be perfectly okay. A little weird, but perfectly okay. Because we're not worshiping an image of a god, of a saint. You know, we're not worshiping him. We might see him that way. We might not as a god, but we might say, okay, he was a saint-like human being. I would certainly say that. But we're not worshiping him. Hopefully we're emulating him to some end. Hopefully we're inspired by his life and teachings, just as we should be inspired by the words of any teacher. But it comes back to us. It comes back to our heart and to our true nature. That is whom we have to serve. Now, in so doing, we are serving the entire world, right? And so that's my final answer to that question. Our job is to serve the entire world as best we can each and every day. And some days we'll do better than that than others, just as with every other job. We don't go into our work and do the same job every day. We're going to have days we're better than others. We don't pay the same every day. We're going to have days we parent better than others. We don't grandparent the same every day, you know, and so on. We just, you know, but we do the best we can every day. We are serving that Dharma. So one more screen share that I'm gonna, this Elizabeth sent me this morning while I was putting this together. Where's my screen sharing thingy here? I'm gonna put this up here. This is from Jack Kornfeld. Buddhist monks begin each day with a chant of gratitude for the blessing of their life. Native American elders begin each ceremony with grateful prayers to Mother Earth and Father Sky, to the four directions, to the animal, plant, and mineral brothers and sisters who share our earth and support our life. In Tibet, monks and nuns even offer prayers of gratitude for the suffering they have. Grant that I might have enough suffering to awaken to the deepest possible compassion and wisdom. The aim of spiritual life is to awaken a joyful freedom, a benevolent and compassionate in spite of everything. The aim of the spiritual life is to awaken a joyful freedom, a benevolent and compassionate heart in spite of everything. So today we know what everything is. I don't have to enumerate it. We have plenty of everything. It's abundant. And therefore, that is our challenge, to bring forth the three treasures, to bring forth our fundamental nature in these times, no matter how difficult they may be. We don't get a pass. We can't say, oh, these are tough times, I can't do it. No, we don't get that. We're expected to do this regardless. You know, you hear the stories of the Tibetan nuns who were tortured and went through unspeakable horrors in captivity with the Chinese, and come out and turn around and say they're grateful because it was such a good opportunity to practice compassion. I'm in awe of that. I don't think I could ever do that. I don't think I have as much Dharma as they have in their little toe. But it sets talking about the inspiration. There's the inspirational aspect. They did not give themselves an excuse not to practice. They did not give themselves an excuse not to manifest the Dharma, not to live the way, even under the most horrible, unbearable conditions. And so they serve as an inspiration to us. And we in turn can serve as an inspiration to others. The more difficult that the times become, the more we need to shine this light of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This light of fundamental nature. This light of realization. At least for me, that's who I feel I have to serve. The job that I have with whatever time I have remaining in this world. And some days are good and some days are not.
Peter, I have something that I've sort of been grappling with, and I think it is my awareness of a hindrance to an open and compassionate heart. And I I think about the horror that's taking place right now in Ukraine, and then the uh, union that's coming together from the EU, the United States, and some other countries, which seem to be presenting a united front, and and in a way that that makes me feel good. Uh, but then I think about, well, you know, how much are we willing to sacrifice? If our country was asked, cut back seriously on fossil fuels and natural gas and products that are enhancing Russia's economy. Um, it's easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, sure, I'd do that," but I don't have to do that. So I'm not really testing myself as to whether I would do that. And so I think compassion for the world right now is really, really difficult when some of us live lives that are so comfortable. And I don't quite know how it can, how that compassion can help. I mean, certainly contributions are one way, but uh, I don't know. I'm just kind of grappling with, are we really willing to sacrifice, or are we just kind of saying things that sound good?
Well, so you said was something wonderful. You're grappling. Grappling is important. You know, asking the question. This is such a challenging time and such a challenging situation. All right, I have to kind of watch my words here, but we have a bunch of people riding a procession of trucks across the country because they have to wear masks, and which and we have people on the other side who are being blown up and bombed and and displaced by the millions, so on and so forth. And so it's like, as a culture, we are so entitled. People complaining about gas prices, when it's a direct so, but I think this tests all. I in some ways I say, thank God we're not the generation that faced World War II. We might have just said, let them have Europe, because it's going to be not so good for our economy if we stand up to Germany, to the Nazis. I mean, that's we're very entitled and very self-centered as a culture right now. And so, so the questions you're asking, I think the questions we all need to be asking ourselves. And then there are broader questions. I have lots of friends online who, frankly, they piss me off a little bit, but they're right. How come we're jumping us when these are white Christian Europeans, but when Russia was killing Syrians, we weren't so concerned about it? Brown-skinned Muslims. I think that's absolute, on one hand, absolutely we should support Ukraine, but it's a completely legitimate question in my mind. Why haven't we jumped up so fast when the peoples weren't Christian or weren't white? And so that tests me. I mean, I feel that, because I feel like, oh, like I'm really, all in for Ukraine. And I'm thinking, yeah, no, I really wasn't all in when people were being bombed in Aleppo and places like that, and I was wrong. you know. And then we come up across the sort of the question of compassion fatigue. Not a Buddhist concept, by the way. But you know, sometimes, you know, like I frequently, like the one that I find hardest to endure is the BBC News, because they find every horrible atrocity everywhere on the planet and they pack it into this hour segment. And I'm thinking, oh, God only takes so much, you know. I can sort of deal with Ukraine, but if you now mention Sudan and, oh, by the way, Yemen, and by the way, you know, it's like, I get overwhelmed. You know, our brains were not wired to live in the internet age. The information we can get inundated with, you know, if I lived 100 years ago or 150 years ago, I'd know what went on in my village, maybe. I'd know on in a few villages, you know, and maybe 2 weeks later, I'd hear what happened in Boston a couple of weeks ago. And here I'm almost instantaneously, I'm hearing what's happening in Thailand and China, and oh my God, you know. So this is really a challenge that no other, in a sense, no other generation in human history has faced, to try to remain compassionate in the face of the entire global catastrophe. And how do we prioritize? Where do we put our energy and our time and our compassion, given that those are finite? So I think these, I don't know that any of these questions have answers, but I think they're such important questions that we need to be asking. You know, I think sometimes that the closer you get to having the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha in the world today is the Dalai Lama. So sometimes I watch what he's doing and saying, and I think, you know, and so he's obviously terribly upset about what's happening in Ukraine, but he's terribly upset every time human beings or the natural world is suffering. He doesn't set up a hierarchy of suffering or a hierarchy of calamities. He opens heart to them all. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how many of us can do that? I think that's something to aspire to. He is the living embodiment of the three treasures. Such a complex world, such a complex time. You know.
Peter and others, I've just returned from Virginia, where we attended services for my brother, who died at age 75 of Lewy body dementia. And as we're talking about compassion, I saw it in so many faces, so many people at an individual level with small kindnesses, gentle words, just presence. We don't have to deal with the abstract. We don't have to deal with Ukraine. We have to deal with our families and our neighbors and the people we're with every day. And to me, that's where the practice, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where it really matters.
I'm reminded of a time in the Treetop Zendo when Steph said, this was years ago, said, you know who I really feel sorry for is Dick Cheney. You know, I have a lot of compassion for. And I was like, what? At the time, I was just, not, I guess, mature enough in my practice to understand completely. I guess that was one of those aha moments. And having to, I had to integrate that into our practice with Trump too. We all kind of had the same and having to feel compassion for everybody. It is a, I just want to put things in the black and white category, evil and good. And I hate, the bad people. And it's not that simple. And they are all us, even the bad people. So I have to kind of keep that in mind when I get in my black and white thinking.
As do we all, I think, we I don't know whether it's in our epigenetics or simply socialized, but we have this sort of tendency towards tribalism and towards right and wrong, and my tribe is right and your tribe is wrong, and we can fall into that so easily.
I am as distressed about the sea, the environment of lies that the Russian people live in, including the military. They're just awash in misinformation and untruths, and how in the world can they find their way and find some how to proceed, because they have, it's amorphous, it's ever changing, it's there's nothing to hold on to except the word of authority, which is misleading them all.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Whoever's
Oh,
talking, please talk.
There is something about wanting answers and just having things, clear cut. And that's where I think the appeal of authoritarianism is. And And I'd like that out of Buddhism too, but this is a practice that we know that moves beyond the answers to looking at yourself, to finding things within yourself. And I don't know. It's unfortunate that having the answers is just so appealing, and not having to think any more about it. And I guess that's our nature. I don't know.
Did you notice that the Manichaean figures were wearing the colors of Ukraine?
No, I didn't. I didn't put it in that context. But it did really cause me to think about, what we've done to Iraq. This was one point the cradle of culture and religion in the world, and it has been bombed and obliterated and torn apart, and so we all faced the challenge that those Tibetan nuns faced on maybe 1,000th scale, but it's hard to be compassionate and open, and to live our practice and to live our fundamental nature in a trying situation. And yet that's, it's easy to sit around in a zendo or someplace, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, maybe the start of World War III and a few other things, and feel pretty righteous about our practice. But this is where the rubber is meeting the road. It's when it gets tough. It's when people, several of you pointed out, it's when people are hard to have compassion for. It's seeing the suffering, this Ukrainian thing, right? The Ukrainians are suffering and the Russians are suffering, and they're just beginning to see the suffering. But I've seen, Russians talking about the fact Putin's repression is now mirroring the height of the Soviet Union. We're back to the gulags and bread lines and all the things that Russia had escaped for a couple of decades. Awful. And at the same time, all the other things. Not easy. But thank God we have this. It's also a tremendous anchor in the storm. It gives us tremendous resilience, tremendous capacity to face whatever it is we have to face. Whether it's on a microcosm like Margaret's talking about, in the lives of our families and loved ones and neighbors, or whether it's in the macrocosm in terms of the fate of peoples and nations. And we have a practice that helps us be able to be and face and deal with these realities. Very fortunate. Okay.
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your practice, and
Thank
be
you.
well and stay safe this week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.